You don't get destroyed in dark alleys. You don't get taken down by obvious enemies. You get dismantled in living rooms, in group chats, at dinner tables, in places that feel safe. And the scariest part? You don't even realize it's happening. Most men walk straight into the environments that are quietly stripping them of ambition, edge, and hunger, then wonder why they feel weaker every year. The rooms you relax in are the same rooms that are reshaping you into something smaller. The smiles around you aren't harmless. The comfort isn't neutral, it's conditioning. And if you don't see it, you will slowly become average without ever understanding why. Men rarely collapse because of enemies. They collapse because comfort sedates them. Because familiar faces make stagnation feel acceptable. Because being understood feels better than being challenged. You tell yourself you're just socializing, just networking, just unwinding. But every conversation shapes your standards. Every room either sharpens you or softens you. There is no in-between, and some of the most dangerous places a man can stand look completely normal. Today I'm breaking down 7 of the most lethal environments a man can stay in. These places don't just waste time, they drain ambition, they dull instincts, they turn disciplined men into spectators of their own potential. If you recognize yourself in any of these, don't look away. That discomfort you feel, that's awareness waking up. And before we go deeper, if you're serious about staying sharp and seeing the world for what it really is, hit subscribe right now. This isn't entertainment. This is survival. This is about keeping your edge in a world designed to file it down. The first trap is the sympathy circle. You know exactly what it is. The group chat where everyone complains about work. The weekly drinks where life is unfair. The table where venting becomes a ritual. It feels supportive. It feels brotherly. It feels like connection. But it's a loop. A feedback cycle of weakness disguised as bonding. When you sit in those circles and spill your frustrations, you think you're releasing pressure. What you're actually doing is rehearsing powerlessness. You repeat the same problems, they nod, they agree, they validate. Yeah man, that sucks. I know exactly what you mean. And nothing changes. No strategy, no execution. Just shared frustration that temporarily feels good. That feeling is the hook. It's addictive. Because for a moment you don't feel alone. But pay attention. Did your ambition increase after those nights? Did you leave with a plan? Or did you just feel lighter for a few hours, then heavier the next day? Every time you broadcast your struggles in a room that thrives on struggle, you lower your perceived value, not because they hate you, but because humans rank each other unconsciously. The man who repeatedly talks about problems without solutions becomes associated with limitation. You may get sympathy, you won't get respect. And here's the darker layer. People compare themselves constantly. When you expose your weaknesses, some feel relief. Your stagnation comforts their stagnation. Your complaints justify their inaction. So they'll keep you talking, keep you venting, keep you right there with them. In the house of shared excuses, nobody rises. Everyone survives together, at the same level. If you want to grow, you can't keep feeding environments that reward emotional release over strategic action. Sometimes power isn't in speaking, it's in staying silent, solving quietly, and letting results speak later. The man who moves in silence builds leverage. The man who vents builds familiarity, and familiarity rarely inspires advancement. The second trap is more glamorous. It's the table of unearned importance. This is where you get invited into rooms that look powerful, upscale settings, influential conversations, high-status energy. People who once intimidated you now smile at you. You feel elevated just by being present. But proximity is not possession. Being near influence is not the same as having influence. You can sit at the table and still have no say. You can be welcomed into the room and still hold zero leverage. The illusion is subtle. You start adjusting your style, your tone, your interest to match the environment. You begin to believe you're leveling up. But check your results. Has your income changed? Has your authority increased? Has your decision-making power expanded? Or are you just enjoying the optics? This trap is dangerous because it kills hunger. It makes you feel accomplished before you've built anything substantial. You leave feeling important even though nothing in your life has fundamentally improved. You start chasing invitations instead of impact, appearances instead of ownership. And slowly you become dependent on the validation of rooms you don't control. The third trap is the echo chamber of small victories. This is where you're the standout guy in a limited environment. The smartest in your friend group, the most ambitious in your office, the one people ask for advice. It feels good. You feel ahead. You feel respected. But if you're always the strongest in the room, you stop growing. When no one challenges your thinking stagnates. When everyone looks up to you, you stop looking up at anyone else. Your standards shrink to match the environment. You celebrate wins that would be invisible in larger arenas. You measure yourself against people who aren't even competing seriously. That comfort becomes a ceiling. Being admired in a small pond can feel like dominance. But step into a larger ocean, and suddenly you realize how little you've stretched. Real growth demands friction. It demands environments where you're not the most capable man in the room. The sympathy circle drains your drive. The table of borrowed importance sedates your ambition. The echo chamber feeds your ego while limiting your evolution. And these three often work together. You vent with one group, feel elevated in another, and stay superior in a third. Meanwhile, your real potential stays untouched. Now comes a quieter killer, the sunk cost attachment. This isn't just about relationships. It's about businesses, partnerships, friendships, projects. Anything that should have ended but didn't. You stay because you've invested too much time, too much energy, too much pride. You tell yourself quitting would mean failure, that loyalty means enduring, that perseverance defines strength. But there's a difference between commitment and self-sabotage. If something stopped growing years ago and you're still feeding it, you're not being strong. You're being sentimental, and sentiment is expensive. Every hour spent trying to revive something dead is an hour not spent building something alive. Men often fall not because they lose, but because they refuse to cut losses. They cling to the past to avoid admitting miscalculation. Ego keeps them trapped longer than circumstance ever could. Ask yourself honestly, are you maintaining something out of vision or out of fear of looking inconsistent? The fifth trap is performance status, the lifestyle you project but haven't earned. The expensive dinners, the designer labels, the luxury experiences funded by pressure rather than profit. It looks like success from the outside, but inside, it's anxiety. This is where modern men bleed quietly. You buy to impress. You upgrade to compete. You spend to maintain an image. But image doesn't generate leverage. Production does. Ownership does. Skill does. When you tie your identity to what you display, you become enslaved to maintaining it. You can't slow down. You can't pivot. You can't admit setbacks. Because your persona depends on the illusion continuing. Debt becomes your silent partner. Validation becomes your fuel, and you wake up one day realizing you've been financing other people's perception of you. Looking wealthy is not the same as being powerful, and chasing the appearance of status is one of the fastest ways to stay financially fragile. If any of these hit you, don't scroll past it, don't brush it off. Awareness is uncomfortable because it forces responsibility, and this is just the beginning. Tell me in the comments, which one have you seen in your own life? And be honest. Growth starts with brutal honesty. Now let's move into the traps that don't just drain your energy, they reshape your identity. The sixth environment is the neutral zone, the middle ground, the place where you try to stay liked by everyone. You avoid taking sides. You soften your opinions. You tell yourself you're being diplomatic, mature, balanced. But in competitive environments, neutrality rarely earns respect. It earns invisibility. When conflict rises, when decisions must be made, when leadership is required, the man who stands in the middle gets stepped over. The winner doesn't trust him. The loser doesn't rely on him. He becomes background noise. You think you're protecting relationships. What you're really doing is protecting comfort. You don't want tension. You don't want backlash. You don't want to risk being disliked. So you dilute your stance. You become agreeable, adaptable, safe. But safety has a cost. If no one knows where you stand, no one knows what you stand for. And if no one knows what you stand for, they don't attach authority to your presence. You might be tolerated, you won't be followed. Power requires clarity. It requires a flag planted in the ground. That means some people will disagree with you. Some will distance themselves. Some will label you difficult. That's fine. Being respected by everyone is a myth. Being respected by the right people is strategy. The neutral man absorbs pressure from all sides and gains nothing from it. He becomes the buffer, the mediator, the emotional sponge, and when things stabilize, he's forgotten. If you want sovereignty, you cannot live permanently in the middle. Choose your principles, accept the friction, let some doors close. The cost of being liked by all is being valued by none. The seventh trap is deeper than geography. It's psychological. It's the shadow of who you used to be, your hometown, your old circle, the people who knew you before you grew, before you disciplined yourself, before you built ambition. They still see the earlier version of you, the insecure one, the uncertain one, the manageable one. And whether they admit it or not, your growth unsettles them. When you return, physically or digitally, you feel it. The subtle jokes, the reminders of old mistakes, the way they bring up stories that shrink you back into your former identity. It sounds harmless, it sounds nostalgic, but it anchors you. Human beings struggle to update their perception of someone they've known for years. It's easier to keep you in the old category. If you become sharper, more disciplined, more driven, it creates contrast, and contrast makes others question themselves. So they pull you back gently, with humour, with remember when, with comments that seem friendly but keep you small. If you spend too much time in environments that define you by your past, you start unconsciously performing that version again. You soften your growth, you tone down your ambition, you become familiar. Familiar is comfortable, but comfort erases transformation. To evolve, sometimes you have to become unfamiliar, even distant. Not out of arrogance, but out of protection. You cannot fully step into a new identity while constantly rehearsing the old one. These traps aren't obvious. They don't announce themselves as threats. They disguise themselves as loyalty, balance, history, connection. But look at the pattern. The sympathy circle normalizes struggle. The illusion table normalizes appearance over ownership. The echo chamber normalizes small thinking. The sunk cost attachment normalizes staying stuck. The performance lifestyle normalizes debt. The neutral zone normalizes invisibility. The hometown shadow normalizes regression. Each one chips away at edge, at hunger, at momentum. And here's the hard truth. None of them force you to stay. You choose them. Because they're warm. Because they're familiar. Because leaving them requires discomfort. Growth is rarely loud. It's quiet, disciplined separation from environments that don't align with your future. From this point forward, every room you enter should be evaluated. Does this sharpen me? Does this expand my leverage? Does this increase my standards? If the answer is no, your presence there is costing you something. Start auditing your circle, not emotionally, strategically. Who challenges you? Who elevates conversations? Who talks about solutions instead of problems? Who builds instead of complains? Who pushes instead of pacifies? And just as important, where are you shrinking yourself to maintain comfort? You cannot step into higher arenas while clinging to lower ones. You cannot evolve while protecting every old bond. You cannot demand more from life while surrounding yourself with environments that reward less. This doesn't mean isolation forever. It means intentional association. Silence becomes powerful here. You don't need to announce your departure from low-level environments. You don't need dramatic speeches. You quietly reduce exposure. You redirect time. You invest attention elsewhere. Attention is currency. Every hour you give to stagnant rooms is an hour not invested in skill, health, leverage, or meaningful alliances. And understand this. When you begin withdrawing from draining environments, some people will react. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant, that you think you're better. Let them. Growth always looks like betrayal to those who benefit from your stagnation. Your responsibility is not to maintain comfort for others. It is to maximize your potential. That requires selectivity, boundaries, discernment. The man who wants sovereignty must accept loneliness at times. Not permanent isolation, but seasons of reduced noise. Because clarity is easier when you're not constantly influenced. Most men never leave the traps because leaving means stepping into uncertainty. New rooms, new standards, new expectations. That's intimidating. But ask yourself, are you truly afraid of uncertainty? Or are you addicted to familiarity? There is a difference. Familiarity gives predictable outcomes. Even if those outcomes are mediocre, at least they're known. Uncertainty demands adaptation, growth, accountability. And this is where most men hesitate. They see the trap, they feel the discomfort, they agree with the logic, then they go right back to the same rooms. Recognition without action changes nothing. So here's your internal test. If you disappeared from your current circles for 6 months and focused purely on growth, would your life expand or collapse? If the honest answer is expand, then you already know what needs to be done. You don't have to burn bridges recklessly. But you do have to be honest about which bridges lead nowhere. The environments around you are either sharpening your blade or dulling it. There is no neutral impact. Human beings absorb standards. You will inevitably drift toward the expectations of your dominant circle. Choose that circle carefully, because your future self is being shaped right now, not by enemies, but by rooms. Now we get practical. Awareness means nothing if you don't move. Seeing the trap but staying inside it is worse than never seeing it at all. At least the blind man has an excuse. You don't. So this is where most men separate. Not at realization, but at execution. The first move is ruthless assessment. You have to audit your life like a strategist, not like a sentimental friend. Every relationship, every weekly habit, every recurring environment. Ask one brutal question. Does this sharpen me or soften me? Not does it feel good? Not does it feel loyal? Not does it feel familiar? Does it increase my leverage, my discipline, my influence, my standards? Or does it keep me predictable and manageable? If the answer is comfort, you already know. Start with the sympathy environments. You don't need dramatic exits. You reduce exposure. You stop volunteering vulnerability to people who convert it into conversation fuel. You stop attending gatherings built on complaining. You redirect that time into building, into training, into planning. The silence will feel strange at first. You'll want to text, to vent, to release. Don't. Channel that pressure into action. Solve before you speak. Move before you announce. Next, cut the illusion of borrowed importance. If you're sitting at tables where you have optics but no ownership, change your strategy. Stop chasing invitations. Start chasing competence. Instead of trying to look aligned with power, build something that forces power to notice you. Skills compound. Appearances expire. You don't need to be seen everywhere. You need to be undeniable somewhere. This is where ego will fight back. It likes attention. It likes being recognized. But attention without authority is empty calories. You need substance, depth, production. Build in silence. Let the metrics speak. Let the results remove doubt. That's how you flip the script from spectator to operator. Now the harder cut, the sunk cost attachments. This one hurts because it attacks pride. You stayed loyal, you invested years, you defended it publicly. Walking away feels like admitting you misjudged. But understand this, strategic retreat is not weakness, it's recalibration. The man who refuses to pivot dies defending bad decisions. If a relationship, business, or environment has shown consistent decline, you must stop negotiating with hope. Hope is not strategy. Data is strategy. Look at patterns. Look at growth curves. Look at outcomes. If it's flat or falling, you withdraw resources, cleanly, calmly, without revenge, without drama. You don't need to burn it down, you just stop feeding it. Then comes the performance lifestyle. If you are funding perception instead of power, this is your wake-up call. Strip it back, downsize if needed, reallocate, invest in assets that produce, not liabilities that impress. The world may see less flash. That's fine. Your goal is not applause, it's autonomy. The quiet man stacking resources beats the loud man showcasing rented status every time. This stage requires discipline. You will feel the urge to maintain image, to keep up, to prove you're still up. Let that die. The strongest position is financial flexibility. Real leverage is having options. You cannot have options if you are chained to appearances. Now let's talk about the neutral zone. This one demands backbone. You have to define where you stand. Not aggressively, not emotionally, clearly. What are your values? What are your non-negotiables? What standards do you refuse to lower? Write them down if you have to. Because when tension rises, you won't have time to invent principles. You will lose some people. That's inevitable. But you'll gain clarity. And clarity attracts the right alliances. Strong individuals respect defined men. They don't trust shapeshifters. If you want authority, you must be consistent, predictable in principle, not in weakness. Now, the hometown shadow. This is about identity control. You don't have to hate your past, you just can't live inside it. Limit exposure to environments that constantly remind you of who you were. Expand exposure to spaces that reinforce who you are becoming. If old circles mock your discipline, reduce access. If they resist your ambition, create distance. You don't owe anyone stagnation for the sake of comfort. Growth often requires geographic, digital, or psychological relocation. That doesn't mean arrogance, it means protection. You guard your mindset like territory, because it is. After the cuts come reconstruction. You don't just remove, you replace intentionally. Start curating higher standard environments. Join rooms where you're not the most advanced person, where conversations stretch you, where execution is normal, where complaining is rare and building is expected. At first, you'll feel behind. Good. That's pressure. Pressure builds adaptation. Be selective with alliances. You don't need many. You need aligned. Men who value discipline. Men who act. Men who understand delayed gratification. Men who speak less and do more. One solid strategic ally is worth more than 10 social companions. Then, embrace controlled isolation. Not loneliness, not bitterness, strategic solitude. This is where your identity stabilizes. Without constant external influence, you clarify your mission. What are you building? Why? For what timeline? Define it with precision. A man without mission drifts back to familiar traps. Your mission becomes your filter. If an environment doesn't serve it, it's optional. If a relationship distracts from it, it's limited. If an opportunity accelerates it, it's prioritized. This level of clarity eliminates confusion. You must also retrain your attention. Attention is your most valuable asset. Where it goes, identity follows. Stop feeding media, conversations, and rooms that glorify mediocrity. Replace them with content, mentors, and circles that reinforce growth. The brain adapts to its dominant input. Choose it deliberately. Execution now becomes daily. Discipline becomes structure. You build routines that support strength, physical training, skill development, financial tracking, strategic planning. Structure reduces emotional decision-making. Emotion is reactive. Structure is sovereign. And here's the key. Don't announce your transformation. Don't broadcast exits. Don't explain yourself excessively. Silence is powerful. When people ask where you've been, let your progress answer. The traps will try to reappear. Invitations will come back. Old patterns will tempt you. That's normal, but now you see them. Recognition plus discipline equals immunity. This is not about becoming cold for the sake of ego. It's about becoming intentional for the sake of power. Warmth is fine, but weakness disguised as warmth is expensive. You're not here to be harvested by comfortable rooms. You're here to build leverage, influence, strength, autonomy. And the only way that happens is if you are willing to choose growth over familiarity. Consistently. This is where it becomes permanent. Not motivation, not a phase, not a temporary burst of discipline. Permanent. Because here's the truth. Escaping the traps once is not enough. They regenerate. They adapt. They wait for you to relax. The sympathy circle will invite you back. The illusion table will open a seat. The echo chamber will praise you again. The past will whisper your old name. And if your mindset isn't locked in, you will drift. So now we harden it. First, absolute clarity of mission. If you don't know exactly what you're building, you will default to what feels good. Define it. What are you becoming? What income level? What skill set? What physical standard? What influence? Vague goals create weak men. Precision creates pressure. And pressure creates evolution. Your mission must be specific enough that it filters decisions automatically. If an environment doesn't move you toward it, it becomes irrelevant. If a relationship slows it down, it gets limited. If an opportunity accelerates it, it gets prioritized. This is how sovereign men think. Everything is measured against the objective. Second, relentless prioritization. Most men are exhausted not because they work hard, but because they work scattered. They try to maintain social approval, appearances, distractions, side dramas, and still build something meaningful. It doesn't work. Power requires focus. Cut the non-essentials without apology. You're not obligated to attend everything. You're not required to reply instantly. You're not available for endless emotional labor. Energy is finite. Spend it like it matters. Third, build a fortress of discipline. Motivation fades. Emotion fluctuates. Discipline stabilizes. You train when you don't feel like it. You work when no one is watching. You save when others are spending. You stay silent when others are oversharing. This consistency compounds quietly. Your body, your finances, your mind, these must reflect control, because without self-control, external control is impossible. If you can't command yourself, you will be commanded by environments. Fourth, strategic alliances only. Not social clutter, not endless acquaintances, alliances. People aligned with growth, execution, and long-term thinking. Conversations about expansion, about systems, about leverage. Not endless gossip and recycled problems. You don't need a large circle, you need a sharp one. Fifth, master silence. Stop announcing your next move. Stop advertising your grind. Stop explaining your strategy. The loud man seeks validation. The quiet man builds advantage. When results arrive without warning, they carry weight. Move in a way that surprises people, not because you talked, but because you executed. Silence protects momentum. The more you broadcast, the more opinions you invite. Opinions slow execution. Sixth, embrace discomfort as a requirement. The traps were warm. That's why they were lethal. Growth feels different. It feels uncertain, challenging, sometimes lonely. Good. That tension is evidence you are stretching. Comfort is a ceiling. Discomfort is a ladder. If you ever feel too comfortable for too long, audit your environment immediately. Growth rarely coexists with prolonged ease. Seventh, ruthless management of the past. No nostalgia that weakens you. No revisiting environments that shrink you. No readopting identities you've outgrown just to make others comfortable. You are allowed to evolve. You're allowed to outgrow. You're allowed to detach. Your past is reference, not residence. Eighth, leverage every room. Walk into environments with awareness. Who holds influence? What is valued here? Where is the opportunity? Where is the drain? Observe before engaging. Speak with intention. Exit when necessary. Social awareness is armor. Never forget. Every room has a hierarchy. Every circle has a currency. Learn it quickly or be used by it. Ninth, constant self-audit. The most dangerous moment for a man is when he believes he has arrived. That's when standards slip. That's when comfort creeps back in. Regularly ask yourself, am I sharper than 6 months ago? Stronger? Wealthier? More disciplined? Or just busier? If progress stalls, something in your environment is dulling you. Identify it. Remove it. Adjust immediately. 10th, relentless execution. Thinking is not enough. Planning is not enough. Watching videos like this is not enough. Action is the divider. Clean, decisive, consistent action. The predator does not hesitate. The disciplined man does not wait for perfect conditions. He moves, because hesitation is expensive. While you debate, someone else executes. Now combine everything. Clarity of mission, focused priorities, fortress discipline, strategic alliances, controlled silence, embrace discomfort, clean detachment from the past, environmental awareness, constant self-audit, relentless execution. This is how you remain sovereign. The world will always offer you comfort disguised as connection, validation disguised as respect, nostalgia disguised as loyalty, neutrality disguised as wisdom. Learn to see through it. Most men won't. Most men will stay warm. They'll sit in the same rooms for years, repeating the same conversations, defending the same limitations. That is their choice. Yours is different. You've seen the traps. You understand how subtle they are. Now the responsibility is yours. Stay and be slowly harvested, or step out and build something real. And understand this. Sovereignty is selective. It narrows your circle. It raises your standards. It demands discipline. But it gives you something comfort never will. Control. Control over your time. Control over your direction. Control over your identity. No more drifting through rooms that shrink you. No more funding illusions. No more replaying the past. No more standing in the middle hoping to be liked. From here forward, every interaction is intentional. Every commitment is evaluated. Every environment is chosen, not defaulted into. If this hit you the way it was meant to, don't just agree silently. Like the video so more men wake up. Subscribe now if you're serious about never losing your edge, and share this with one person who's still trapped in comfortable rooms. They might hate you for it today, but thank you later. The fire has already been lit. The awareness is already there. Now it's execution. Step out of the warm rooms, step into pressure, build in silence, move with strategy, and whatever you do, never let comfort make you ordinary.